Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to a Thursday night live stream. Another one with me, your intrepid host. My name is Chris, and I'm with. It's a road game for Jim McCormick. He's down the shore. Hi, Jim.
Yeah, I can't say which shore just because sometimes it depends what state I'm operating in. I can say it in this case because the great state, it's a great state of New Jersey because DraftKings does operate here. So I'm able to unveil the mask and just be myself here. So I'm down the shore, which doesn't make much sense if geographically for Philadelphia, but I'm down the shore.
Down the shore in New Jersey. Yeah. I'm assuming this means that there are no outstanding, and they're not warrants, but like subpoenas from your family for legal troubles and underscore related issues in New Jersey?
No, it's mostly zoning wars here. Mostly, like over like jetties and wharfs, and just
it's hard
like
being
that.
Super rich. It is hard, man. It's difficult. It's tough.
Underscores. They were profitable at one point. So
all right,
let's go. Look at you a lot of bird sanctuaries, stuff like that. So
the underscore bird sanctuary. This video is sponsored by the underscore bird sanctuary. No, it's actually sponsored by DraftKings, about whom we'll talk later. We appreciate DraftKings for sponsoring our live streams. And our goal here is to answer draft strategy questions for about a half an hour. That's our plan. We're going to go as quickly as we can. We have some canned questions that came from the people of the book on Facebook. But if you're live, you're getting priority. Dave Piper's going to pick your questions out of the chat. So as you stream on in and you see us talking about draft strategy questions, please hit us up in the chat live, and we'll get them from Dave to me, and I will pose them, and we'll do our best to answer. And, all disclaimers apply here. All drafts are unique, and we're not sure, but we're going to do our best to tell you at least what we think, what we would do in fantasy drafts. Because, Jim, I don't know if you know, but like 2 weeks from tonight, actual football that counts begins.
It's draft season. I mean, we'll be drafting together quite soon. It quite literally is draft season. It's a really fun time. But yeah, like you said, leagues are unique, but hopefully there's some universal lessons or just takes that can apply to a lot of our approaches. So,
all right, let's do it. Tim S asks the question, round 10, I've got two awesome keeper options, but I can only keep one of them, Michael Pittman or Kyren Williams. If you had to pick, Jim?
I'd pick Kyren Williams if I had to pick one. Just the scarcity of back, also just like Pitman I really like, but there's also some questions about, I don't know, the passing volume with regards to like Richardson. More importantly, just straight up, even if it was the same exact situation as last year, or I felt that he could replicate the same exact season, I just Williams, because what a valuable situation to be in. And I don't think it's so difficult to consolidate that. To get a hold of that whole running back situation, just getting Blake Corum later. So I would do that. Yeah.
Or earlier, as the case may be, if you get Kyren.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Of course. Yeah.
What I'll say is I definitely understand why the question is even a question, because Kyren Williams is real injury prone, real potential for him to miss games, and you feel like you're left holding the bag. But I just think you chase upside when you're that late. So I'm with you. It would be Kyren Williams. Barney asks, does your approach change draft strategy wise in a 14-team league versus a 12-team league?
My draft strategy, I don't think it changes. No, I mean, I'm in a larger league, like for example, with in large
16-team league.
16-team league. It's even a greater expanse. Maybe if anything, I swing a little more, like just to make sure I get what I want early. I'm also just, but I don't even know if that makes sense. That's just like a word. No, that sounds cool. But because I'm just thinking, when I'm in your league, I'm trying to think of that's a league that I think of depth. So it's deeper than what he's asking. But I really do think it speaks to the concept. And when I'm in those leagues, I feel like I want to differentiation, I think, can matter. So I think having a great tight end, for example, I can think like I've seen Barons do it. I've seen you do it before. When you have some differentiation, I think that can matter in a 14 or 16 team league. So maybe I'd be more willing to be a little weird with it, I guess. So to go off because to win that league, to win a league of such scale, not to say I have a tournament DFS, mentality, but yeah, you have to differentiate a little bit more, I think, to be special. So maybe that would be the answer, that I do look a little bit more. I am more willing to go, say, like a unique build, maybe, in that league.
Scarcity is really what you're always managing in any auction, fantasy draft, any situation of this goofy thing that we do. Scarcity is the thing you're managing, and the more teams there are in a league, the more scarcity there is. Suddenly, there are 14 starting quarterbacks. There are 14 starting tight ends. That we say when you get a Superflex, suddenly you're taking quarterbacks in the first round. Well, a 14-team league doesn't require that level of commitment to the position, but absolutely there becomes more scarcity, and it's fine to feel like you want to push it a little more for what we traditionally consider to be the less scarce positions. I don't want to go crazy. I still want to shoot for value, but will I change when we're drafting in large, a 16-team draft? Will I sometimes go against my own 12-team league ranks and elevate somebody at a position that I wouldn't normally consider scarce? Absolutely. So I do think it is fair to slightly adjust and quarterbacks and tight ends go a little bit higher on your draft board. Before we get all the way in, we're like about 5 minutes in. I just want to thank DraftKings for continuing to be our partner in these live streams and in just our general, our whole deal. Jim, our whole deal, which, DraftKings clearly has amazing taste in investing in deals. We're very, very fortunate and happy. If you've ever thought about looking for a place to play the games, a little sportsbook action, we recommend the DraftKings app. Jim was talking about using it in New Jersey. He can also use it in Pennsylvania, and producer Dave can use it in Michigan. Can I use it in California? No, that's not DraftKings' fault, but I used DraftKings this summer in Massachusetts. They have a deal right now in honor of football starting, where if you've never downloaded the app, go to get wherever you get apps, download the DraftKings app. If you use the code HarrisTube, all one word, you'll get make one $5 bet. You'll get $200 in bonus bets. You probably hear this offer if you consume sports content a lot of different places. If you'd like to give something back to some entertainment that we provide you, if you use our code HarrisTube, they'll notice and it will work, and they'll continue to sponsor the show. Hopefully, college football starts this weekend. There are a couple of very interesting games. It's a limited slate, but some highly ranked teams are playing against each other. And then, of course, the NFL is coming down the pike. So once again, thank you to DraftKings. Please do download that DraftKings app. And if you use the code HarrisTube, make one $5 bet, they'll give you $200 in bonus bets into your account instantly, and you can play around, hopefully $5 at a time. Don't go crazy. But we thank DraftKings very much. All right. Steven asked a question. I'm picking in the 12th position, I assume in a 12-team draft. Is it risky to double on running backs at 12 and 13 and think about wide receivers in the 3rd and 4th round? What do you think?
I don't think it's inherently risky. I hope they're the right backs. I mean, right? Isn't that the question? Like, as long as you like if you really like those players, if they're the players that you like best, right in that situation, go for it. Again, we talked about unique builds. I can see it. We talked, like, I've seen people do it this year in a draft I was in, and it was like, oh, like gasps. But even though it was quite reasonable, like the value that player had gotten. So the point is, it's all about if you believe in those players at that point. I wouldn't do it just to stamp yourself on the strategy to have the positional, have the grid look that color for you, that you have running back. That's pretty looking, and it establishes, I get, the philosophy, but make sure that they're players that you actually believe in those positions. Otherwise, you're just being a philosophical kind of warrior, as opposed to trying to win your league.
Right.
So
I hope anybody watching us live, I hope anybody watching this video afterwards. Hi there. Thank you for checking us out afterwards. There's one thing that I would love for you to take from this video. It is players, not positions. It doesn't make sense to be thinking, okay, if I'm at 12 and 13, do I go RB? Well, if it's Jonathan Taylor and Saquon Barkley, I probably would consider it. I don't know if they'll be there. We'll see. It's a possibility. I've seen drafts where it is the case. If it's Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane, I'm probably not going to do it. It depends on the people themselves. And I think that encourages each individual drafter to make a list of ranks, like legitimately, who do you want first? Who do you want second? Who do you want third? You can take a look at my ranks. You can take a look at ADP. You can take a look at a bunch of it, but however you're going to assemble your own ranks. And then, I really honestly would, especially in the 1st and 2nd rounds. It's not that I think people have this conception that I'm like, you have to take a running back in the 1st round. Take a look at my ranks. I have 4, 5, 6 receivers in the first round. They're just not at the very top. It's about the players. So that's what I would want it to be. Samurai Mike says, what do you think about drafting both running backs in a single NFL team's backfield, given that practically every team is running a committee anyway? For example, Gibbs and Montgomery, Achane and Mostert.
The opportunity cost, I suppose, or whatever word you want to use, just the aggregate of those picks is going to be difficult for me to like balance out for what you're getting. I think it does make sense. Like that's not handcuffing, whatever you want to. That's consolidating a backfield in a way that's probably pretty pricey if you think about it. Again, I don't advise it. Again, but if the value is there, like say Mostert, I could really see the Miami thing being much more reasonable. If you say you just took Achane early and then Mostert slips because for some reason like he's just completely written off, even though he looks to be in the same kind of position, at least like role wise. In any case, I don't exactly advise it because it's a strategy that like is inherently going after something, like you're going after these guys because they're on the same team, or I don't know, or what the point would be is if it happens because of value, fine. I don't exactly think it's the greatest move. Particularly, I think the overlap between like Detroit, for example, would be costly and kind of strange, like to spend like a third and a sixth on one backfield. So I just
nailed it. That at the very end there, you nailed my thoughts exactly, which is depends on the team, depends on the running backs, depends on the backfield. The Miami guys might just be too expensive. I mean, Achane will go in the second round sometimes.
Sure.
And it's tough for me to imagine spending the second and the sixth on Mostert. But say, I mean, Seattle's guys, we've talked enough about Zach Charbonnet, how late he goes. Heck, Tennessee's guys, maybe that isn't the great. Washington's guys, there are teams where I could imagine it. I don't know that I would ever go into a draft seeking it out. You know what it sets you up for. Even if you get to draft Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears as borderline starters on your fantasy team, you get them in rounds such that you have enough good players above them in your draft that you every week are going to be like, maybe I'm starting one of these guys, but definitely I don't have to start both. And I'm just going to kind of see how it goes. And if one gets hurt, I feel like I've got a gold mine. That's very viable, but you will get someone else hurt. And then you will kind of wind up having to make a horrible lineup decision each week and cursing yourself for having both Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. You know, you will likely wind up thinking, ooh, I have bought myself more week-to-week problems than it feels like, even if they do go a little bit lower in drafts. And Jim, you're 100% right. In the case of someone like Miami or Detroit, the price gets it's really expensive for the RB1, and then you're also going to spend a starting pick on an RB2. That's tough.
And there's a pot committed feeling too to that then throughout the season sometimes, like managerial wise. So yeah.
Either Yossi or Josie says, in a league that is heavily weighted on touchdowns, so it's a scoring format that weighs touchdowns very heavily, do you have strategies that you keep in mind that are different from leagues that, you know, all leagues use touchdowns, but some certainly have, you know, we're in a league that has bonus for long touchdowns. Does that change your way of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that, like, for example, we just talked about these backs. Like, Montgomery seems interesting to me because if you think he's going to get goal line touches or work in that space, meaning that's an example, or he's not the best example, but players that work in those areas or traditionally have touchdown opportunities. It's very difficult to predict touchdowns, by the way, and to predict these roles. So these are very difficult things to do. But my point would be, like, if for example, I would put more value on, for example, running backs that I feel like aren't going to be taken off the field, like in a draft, versus say a volume receiver that I'm like, like, you know, I'd rather have Isaiah Pacheco than in the same draft range as those receivers that he's going around in that format, probably because I just believe his 14 to 15 touchdown potential is just much. There's only maybe a handful of receivers I think that have that, whereas. Maybe there's only a handful of players that have that, but maybe it's unique. But there's a few players that I'd pursue. But it's the answer would be it's again about players and that. So it's back to that. It's full circle.
But to be honest, my initial response was going to be I kind of feel like touchdown scoring is baked in. But hearing you talk, I actually think maybe I am changing my mind. I think you're right. I think there's a certain not very many of them, but probably a certain number of running backs who feel like they're on one of the few unimpeachable offenses, Pacheco, Mixon, McCaffrey. McCaffrey's already gone one anyway, where there are touchdowns aplenty and they are probably the goal line option, where I could see maybe bumping them up a few spots. I think you have a good point that there's a range of outcomes for the potential of the upside of an elite touchdown scoring running back that most receivers aren't going to have. I'm not going to that doesn't then make Joe Mixon the number 3 overall pick. We are talking about a few picks here and there. But sure, I think that's a pretty good point. Otherwise, I would try not to.
Sorry,
I would try not to bend too much, is what I was going to say.
Even a quarterback, just like the idea of they're already super valuable, like you said, but there's an additive value to like Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, like the fact that they can add a dozen rushing touchdowns in theory. So
it just feels like that's why they go where they go.
Already. You're right, it's baked in. So
yeah, it feels like it's baked in. All right, Eric says, I took the jacked gerbil, Josh Jacobs, at pick number 15 overall because I would not risk him being whether or not he was going to be there when it came back around to me at 34. Am I crazy? Am I in a cult?
I mean, sometimes when you ask if you're in a cult, it's kind of your answer. But and there's like a whole lexicon that you're breaking down. I mean, like I know who the Jack Dribble is. It's just interesting that maybe one of the viewers is trying to get a question answered, and they're like, "Who is this Jack Dribble?" But
not only do you know who the Jack Dribble is, but I believe you have snuck that nickname into an ESPN player blurb in the past.
I did. I have. So the thing would be like the Cajun Lawyer is my favorite, but the thing with Jacobs is that like that's a really high price. If again it's the player, you said it again. I don't be redundant, but that's higher than I would take the player, 15th overall. But there is a way for him. There is a world where he pays that off. Josh Jacobs is talented enough. It just comes down to like, is that what's going to happen in Green Bay? Is he going to be this like ultra back? Is he going to be back to 2022 Josh Jacobs? I don't know. So it's a little pricey for me, but if you felt he wasn't coming back, enjoy your draft. What do you want me to say? Enjoy your draft. I go for it. I would have probably waited and let the dealer figure it out. So.
I mean, it could, he could have gotten back to you. Scott Pianowski talked on the podcast on Monday. Was it Monday? It might have been Tuesday. It was Tuesday. About this phenomenon of having a player ranked a lot higher than the market. You suspect the market will take him. And his answer to this kind of question, his default is, I got to make myself wait because that's how I win with value. And if I miss, then I just have to be okay with it. And I buy that, but I also buy that there are some times where you just think the market is so wrong that you just go, yeah, I want this one player and I'm not willing to risk it. I just think it really does come down to your own. And I don't think it's stupid to have made that pick. I have Jacobs myself ranked right around there, which is why I'm the cult leader. Clearly.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's an ingredients that make sense. Like we don't get. It's just fun. Like what the excitement level is. He had this 1 year, but he's a 26-year-old guy who has what they call in the fantasy community a legendary season. He has one of those. He has like a 2,000 yard. So.
Yeah, to stretch it out to just beyond Josh Jacobs. And by the way, Jacobs' ADP does seem to be rising. Like every time I check, it feels like people are going. We were talking about Marshawn Lloyd. He can't even get off the trainer's table. A.J. Dillon isn't healthy from last year. This feels like an awesome situation. So pretty quickly, I think it was Eric who asked that question. Like pretty quickly, you might feel even better about that pick.
It's true.
But I think if we stretch it even just beyond Jacobs, there isn't going to be a universal answer because unfortunately we can't predict the future. I think Scott has a point that where we win is by getting the guys we want at a better price than we would pay. But are there times in my own life where I go, I'm just going to take Diggs, even though I know there's a chance he could last another round and a half? I just believe it's going to go well for him. Somebody else's ADP is going up, by the way. The answer is definitely yes. Bruce, how long do you find yourself waiting for quarterback and waiting for tight end? I know they will go higher in my league, and I'm fine waiting and scooping up running backs and wide receivers, but do you have a point where you feel it's right to grab them?
I generally, like the last few years, I've just enjoyed having Konami code, really good It's a good Philadelphia. Yeah, Konami code. Philadelphia accent. But no, just the versatile, do everything quarterbacks in large. I went all in for Hurts. I do think there's a differentiation point sometimes with these quarterbacks. That the scoring level week to week. It's a week to week game. You can position yourself to have those huge weeks. I just think those blow up weeks, they're not predictable, but they're more common among those players that have that versatility to score in different ways. So a quarterback, I generally don't wait as much anymore. I do. That subset of players has grown. So there's more players in that group that I like. But the real answer would be that I'm willing to wait on tight end this year more. I just think there is a more established position this year. There's more of them. It's a more important position to more offenses. I think it's a little dangerous to go right after that top two and think there's this huge tier. I don't think the tiers is clear this year in tight end is my kind of take. No, so
it's not. It was a bunch of touchdowns. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sam Laporta enthusiasts. It was lucky. It was, 10 touchdowns. Yeah. And without him, he didn't get to 1,000 yards. He didn't have it was a great season for a rookie. Amazing. But I can't tell you that. I mean, Cousin Josh's one rule to live by is don't be the person who takes the first tight end ever. It doesn't matter who he is. Never do it. If people have been watching the mock draft videos on YouTube, which Dave maybe will link to one of them right now once the video. I don't know if you can do that live actually. So sorry, Dave, if you can't, but you can find them on the channel. You're going to see very often I do take a quarterback earlier for exactly the reason you said. There does come a point where, especially Joe Burrow, before the foot injury and maybe even after the foot injury, Justin Herbert, I find myself thinking this is a good spot to take them, 6th round, something like that, and I'll do it. I generally would say outside of Superflex, outside of a 14 or 16 team league, I probably don't get one of the consensus top 5 guys, even though Burrow is inside my top 5. I wait on tight end every time. Just if you watch his mock drafts, I think I have T.J. Hawkinson and Taysom Hill in every single one of them because I can figure it out. Tight end is not a position that grants you great advantages. It just doesn't. It's not high enough scoring. All right, Jake. If we like the running backs in the first few rounds and the wide receivers in the later rounds seem to be value, is this the year of zero wide receiver strategy for the little podcast that could, which is kind of the opposite question that we got for the person picking 12 and 13 and wanting to take running backs.
Sure.
No, maybe it's the same. Maybe it's the same question.
Yeah, right. No, I just want I don't want to do that either. I think you really need I think you need good receivers. I think the idea of zero something is that the potential for it to churn itself naturally and come to you, meaning that positionally, the running backs will come to you. Tight end, it used to make more sense that would happen. It still does actually happen. It doesn't really happen at receiver. It's you don't just Puka Nacua. Okay, great, that was amazing. It doesn't really happen where you just percolate up and become the way the running backs do, the way that we can find a Zamir White, even though we don't like him. My point being, that they can come from anywhere in the depth chart, right? He's been in the league for 4 years, and now all of a sudden he's unique. Receivers, it's a more pedigreed position. We kind of know the tiers, so yeah, I wouldn't go zero myself. I am willing to go heavy running back though. So
the greatest trick the devil ever played was
zero.
It was zero. It was anything zero. Was why? There's
it's 0 calories. It's no, it's not gonna work.
Right. It's somehow started. It's funny. Somebody was taking me to task for my stance on rookies. Don't you realize Zeke Elliott was a
he was a rookie once.
That he was a rookie 9 years ago or whatever, and paid off his first round draft pick. And I'm like, man, the fantasy industry has changed in the last 9 years. And one way it's changed is the zero stuff, where just people don't mistake a bumper sticker for actual advice you can use. Don't think of it. I never, ever, ever enter a draft thinking I need to follow this bumper sticker. Somebody told me hero running back. Somebody told me zero wide receiver. Somebody told me I'm just going to pick players. I'm just going to order the players, and I'm going to take them at the beginning of a draft in the order in which I trusted myself to rank them. And then once I've got the first 3, maybe 4 players that are just based on the most talented on my board, or a combination of that and also where I think I can get away with it and take a guy a round later than he typically goes. But once I get through those first few players, then I start looking at positions. Then I start thinking, all right, it's close. I probably could use a receiver here. I can live with this guy. But I just think drafting by bumper sticker bad. No, don't do it.
It's tempting. There's a temptation to have a strategy. There's a temptation to have something to adhere to in these things. But it can be really also like it's a script. You're going into something like a sales call with a script. It's not going to work. Like it's too forced. That's what happens in this draft strategy, that you're going to then be married. For example, if the 2 best players are backs, that's awesome. Go for it, because I think you can easily survive that. Like this. That's somewhat of the tone of that question, was that we find that say that we really, you like 2 backs. Is it okay? Can I survive that? Yes. I just wouldn't ignore a position based on an idea, some philosophy that you staked out in the 2nd round, because how do you know what you're going to do in the 5th round? Like, just keep going.
Yeah. We agree. Tyler says, in an auction, would you rather pay for Saquon or go for a Kamara and a Kenneth Walker in hopes that they'll be similar cost and get 2 guys instead of 1 guy?
I get the idea of the infinite RB2. It's coming down to your player takes. Like, do you think Saquon's super special? Because is he like dynamic? Because I guess it's the replacement level. You can also get another back next to him, right? Like, you're gonna have someone there, whatever, $4 or $5 back. Like, so. I probably would prefer to take the best player that you think is there rather than water it down if you thought it was Saquon. But I can see making that work, like Kamara and Walker. Those 2 particular players, if this was the exact balance, I probably would actually take those 2 players, because that works. Because I just like those price. 2 players. Yeah. But my point would be, I wouldn't say that it's always the value. There's ways that a $50 player pays off, because that's why they're $50 players.
It really depends on your auction. It depends on how savvy the rest of the room is.
Sure.
I do find that as long as you're willing to wait a really long time, you won't necessarily get the RB2/RB3 that you had your heart set on, because that guy just will accidentally get nominated by someone else and people will start throwing lots of dollars at him. But you'll never fail to get a great value on a 2nd running back or a 3rd running back or a 4th receiver or whatever. You'll get really usable players for $5 if you just hang on to your money. So you buy Barkley early. I do tend to buy 1 guy and then sit.
That's kind of what I mean. Yeah, I just think that we're treating those scenarios usually like it's 1 versus 2, but it's really 1 versus what can you scrounge together with that 2nd decision.
Right, the mystery box. Well, not necessarily, because if you don't spend the Barkley money, then you say, all right, I'm going to spend less on Walker, and then I'm going to spend even less on Kamara. And the unfortunate thing is you don't know that. It depends on who else has money and when they get nominated, and it's a whole dynamic that's way less predictable than ADP. So, I'd say, if people ask me all the time, what's your favorite auction strategy? And the last 2 guests on the mock draft who I'm in an auction with both have said, so Chris, you're really good at waiting, and it pisses the rest of us off. The answer is make yourself wait. Don't fail to take anybody in the first hour, but like take fewer players than others, get a couple of stars, and then sit, and you'll have a lot of money, and you might not know which guys are going to be there, but some guys are going to be there. Just the nature of the beast.
You can push the room around for a couple, for a moment,
Joseph says, do you have an age limit when drafting for Dynasty League startups? For example, how many picks apart are you pushing Christian McCaffrey from Breece Hall?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I actually have Dynasty ranks that I can just look at.
Yeah,
that I haven't. I actually have them in the almanac. So I'll tell you, it's like 5 spots. I have Hall RB2. I have McCaffrey RB3, but I have 4 receivers in between them in a standard league. I guess in a PPR, they're actually even a little bit closer.
Yeah, I looked at these for a dynasty thing that I'm in, and it was like 2 and 7 for me between those 2 players. So because there was a trade involving McCaffrey, and it was we were trying to price how do you do that, but he's you have to go for it too. Now that wasn't a startup, so that's different. But it's
So in a startup, do you have an age limit?
No, I mean I generally don't have a number because there's players that I would still want like. For example, in that league, my friend, we're in it together. We co-managed. We got offered Aaron Rodgers for basically nothing, and we were like, "Cool, okay." Just because this person wanted to just throw him in, Yeah, he's Aaron Rodgers, but in this league, it's a 16-team league. We might use him once in a while. I think he's around for 2 years. Who knows? But this player thought age-wise that he just was kind of like the same thing as like a 5th-round rookie pick. So we're like, cool, great. So yeah, I think you can use it against people actually, rather than enforce it.
I think if you're in a Dynasty league that everybody's seeped in the youth-obsessed Dynasty content that's out there, I'm always zagging towards players who are, oh my God, he's only got 2 years left, as opposed to somebody who's never played in the NFL. You know, you see Marvin Harrison will go ahead of AJ Brown. And I think that's absolutely crazy. I don't know for sure Marvin Harrison can even play, and I'm getting years of AJ Brown. A fantasy baseball mindset pervades fantasy football Dynasty, and I think there's an advantage. You know, you got to be careful. You got to be like, okay, Devontae Adams, who's 33, like let's, you know, but yeah, I would say, there is no number, and if anything, I'm willing to. I don't necessarily want to reach for the old guys, as it were, and I don't love it when I think they have one usable year left. But yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page. All right, we're gonna wrap it up with Jeff. It's a Superflex question. If your league tends not to draft quarterbacks as quickly as most Superflex leagues, should you still grab a quarterback early, or should you wait like other people in the league tend to do?
I mean, if you're going to wait on the value, I would try to wait,
sure.
Until the point where you can pull it. Like I wouldn't, if you know this, and this is how it's behaved over time, use that information, because you're basically just saying, I have information and I'm just going to ignore it, because I understand what you're saying. You want to stake yourself and make sure you get in on it. You still can't get in on it, because you're saying that your league doesn't behave as dramatically as others. I've felt that way before. I've been in the early end of a Superflex, and you stake it. You're like, oh, and then it doesn't behave that way, and you feel like you left something on the table. But that's the decision you made. I didn't know how that was going to behave. If I was told to wait, and I could still get player X in round 2, I would have waited. So yeah.
Well, just to put in, I didn't quite understand what you meant there. You're saying when you picked early, you took a quarterback thinking that there's going to be a big run on quarterback,
and there wasn't in this. Yes, this was in my Scott Fish league, the one that I was in. It was like a live league, and I take Jalen Hurts like 3rd overall. The way it went, because it was Mahomes and Allen went, and then there wasn't a run, but you had to live with it, and eventually it evened out. But yeah, it got to the point where I wasn't rewarded for that strategy. But also, we'll find that out in December, not now.
I mean, that's the biggest thing, is just don't take players you want. Don't worry about the conventional wisdom of what's dumb for you to have done. Like it's presented as commandments, and they're just not. We don't know what's going to happen. I promise you, we do not know what's going to happen. There are certainly players that I don't want, but it's mostly because I'm not sure they're good enough to be one of the best players on a fantasy team I'm relying on. Not because I think, wow, you're really stupid in a Superflex for taking Jalen Hurts 3rd. Again, this comes down to players, not positions. But I think your first answer for Jeff is probably right, which is if you know what your league's going to do, then there's no reason to reach. Take a different player. For Superflex advice, because it is a growing and popular, it's a really fun format. The thing that everybody needs to realize is that suddenly quarterback is scarce, and now we're treating it like we treat the scarce positions. And so if this is the first time or one of the first times you're playing in a Superflex league and everybody's going quarterback, go ahead and go quarterback. Get someone good. I mean, there's a point at which you go, okay, I don't care for this particular quarterback, but first round quarterback is absolutely defensible, where it would horrify us in all other circumstances because of scarcity.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, know your format, play to your format. But I just like the fact that I took Jalen Hurts at 3 and you didn't make fun of me. So
well, he's not my guy this year, and you are an absolute homer. So I mean, are we surprised? Really,
no, not at all.
All right. We've done it. We've made it through a whole bunch of questions. I hope folks who are watching it live enjoyed it. And of course, if you're watching it afterwards, more people probably will be watching it afterwards. We hope it was interesting. You can ask us more questions down in the comments, or just think you can disagree with us. You're so old-fashioned the way you think about this stuff. Don't you know? Everybody's told me you have to take receivers in the first 3 rounds. You guys are stupid. Let us know down in the comments. We'd love to hear you. Maybe don't call us stupid. We don't love that part. We love DraftKings. We're very thankful for them continuing to sponsor our little silly talks here. If you go to DraftKings.com or download the DraftKings app, use that code HarrisTube. One $5 bet will get you $200 in bonus bets. Thank you to them. Thank you to Dave Piper for producing, as always. Thank you to you, Jim, for taking time away now that you're down the shore. I appreciate you being here. My name is Chris, and I hope you subscribe to the channel and enjoy, and we'll be back next week with more live stuff.